Alexandra Winters guided another tour group through the Phoenix Aviation Museum, reciting facts about historical aircraft with practiced ease. At 28, she blended into the background. Shoulder-length blonde hair, unassuming clothes, a quiet demeanor that made her nearly invisible to those around her. Her colleagues saw only her polite smile and encyclopedic knowledge of aviation. They never noticed how her fingers traced the curves of fighter jet models with intimate familiarity, or how her eyes lit up when describing thrust-to-weight ratios. And this, she said, gesturing to an F-22 Raptor model, is currently the most advanced tactical fighter in the U.S. Air Force inventory. "Have you ever flown one?" asked a young boy, eyes wide with wonder. Alexandra's smile flickered for just a moment. "No, I haven't had that opportunity." At home that evening, Alexandra unlocked a fireproof box hidden in her closet. Inside lay a distinguished graduate medal from the Air Force Academy, class of 2018, engraved with her name and the words "Excellence in Flight." Beside it was a faded photograph of a young girl sitting in an F-15 cockpit, her father in full Air Force uniform standing proudly beside her. "Reach for the stars, Lexi," read the inscription. Her phone buzzed with a notification. The Holloman Air Force Base F-22 demonstration team would be performing at the Phoenix International Air Show next week. Colonel Brendan Reeves, her former commander, would be leading the exhibition. The same man who had stripped her flight patch from her uniform 6 months ago in front of 20 male pilot trainees, declaring that women like her were liabilities in the cockpit. Alexandra closed the box, her jaw tightening. She had planned to avoid the air show entirely, but something shifted inside her. Perhaps it was time to face her past rather than hide from it. The Phoenix International Air Show bustled with aviation enthusiasts. Alexandra kept to the museum's information booth, answering questions about historical aircraft and distributing brochures. She had almost convinced herself this was just another workday when the announcer's voice boomed across the field. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Holloman Air Force Base F-22 Raptor demonstration team, led by Colonel Brendan Reeves." Colonel Reeves strode across the tarmac in his flight suit, surrounded by adoring fans and fellow pilots who looked at him like he was a god. The F-22 gleamed behind him, sleek, deadly, beautiful. Everything Alexandra had trained for, everything that had been taken from her. The F-22 is the most sophisticated fighter aircraft in history, Reeves was saying to the gathered crowd. It takes a special kind of pilot to handle her. Years of training, exceptional skills, and frankly, the right temperament. His eyes scanned the crowd and locked with hers. A flicker of recognition, then a smirk. "Not everyone has what it takes," he continued, now speaking directly toward her. "Some wash out because they simply don't belong in the cockpit of a machine this powerful." The pilot beside him chuckled knowingly. After the presentation, Alexandra tried to return to the museum booth, but she was intercepted by 2 of Reeves' junior officers who recognized her. "Well, if it isn't Winters, the washout," one said, loudly enough for nearby attendees to hear. "I heard you're giving museum tours now," the other added. "Seems appropriate, talking about planes you'll never fly." Alexandra pushed past them, cheeks burning, only to find herself face to face with Colonel Reeves himself. "Captain Winters," he said, emphasizing her former rank. "Or is it just Miss now? Civilian life treating you well?" Before she could respond, a local reporter who had overheard approached. "Wait, you were military. Were you a pilot?" She thought she was, Reeves answered before Alexandra could speak. "Until she proved that some traditional gender roles exist for a reason. The F-22 program has zero tolerance for incompetence, regardless of what political correctness might demand." The reporter's eyebrows raised. "So you're saying women can't handle the F-22? "I'm saying this woman couldn't," Reeves replied with a dismissive gesture. And after the incident that almost destroyed a multi-million-dollar aircraft, I think we made the right call." He turned to Alexandra. "No hard feelings, though. The museum needs good tour guides." The local news ran a segment about the air show the next evening. Most of it focused on the impressive F-22 demonstration, but they included Reeves' comments, identifying Alexandra by name as a failed female pilot candidate who exemplifies the ongoing challenges of integration in combat roles. By morning, Alexandra's phone flooded with messages. Former colleagues, distant acquaintances, even her landlord had seen the segment. The museum director called her into his office. "Alex, we've received some concerned feedback from patrons," he began awkwardly. "They're questioning whether someone who washed out of flight training should be giving tours about aircraft." "My technical knowledge hasn't changed," Alexandra replied, her voice tight. "Of course, but perception matters. Perhaps you could take a few weeks off until this blows over. Paid leave, of course." That afternoon, Alexandra found a note taped to her apartment door. "Maybe you should give tours about kitchen appliances instead." No signature needed. The handwriting matched the jerky, aggressive style of one of Reeves' pilots. At the local grocery store, two teenage boys recognized her from the news segment. "Hey, look, it's that lady pilot who crashed," one said loudly. "Maybe she should stick to driving a minivan." They laughed as she abandoned her shopping cart and left. The final blow came 3 days later. The Air Force Heritage Foundation was hosting its annual gala in Phoenix, a prestigious event celebrating aviation excellence. Alexandra had been invited months ago to represent the museum. Now an email arrived. "In light of recent revelations about your service record, we feel it would be inappropriate for you to attend an event honoring aviation excellence. We're sure you understand." That night, Alexandra stared at her distinguished graduate medal, tears streaming down her face as 6 months of bottled rage and humiliation finally overflowed. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged her in a post, a photo from the gala she'd been uninvited from. Colonel Reeves stood center stage receiving an award for excellence in training the next generation of combat pilots. The caption read, "True excellence rises to the top. Some people just don't have what it takes." In the background of the photo, barely visible but unmistakable to Alexandra's eye, was the distinctive silver hair of General Haraway, her father's best friend, her godfather, the man who had promised to look out for her after her father's death. He wasn't in a wheelchair or hospital bed, as she'd been led to believe after his reported stroke. He stood tall and proud, apparently supporting Reeves. The betrayal cut deeper than anything else. 3 weeks after the airshow disaster, Alexandra's apartment resembled the aftermath of a storm. Unwashed clothes piled in corners, empty takeout containers cluttered every surface. The flight simulator lay dismantled, parts scattered across the floor from the night she'd attacked it in a fit of rage. She hadn't left her apartment in days. The museum had made her temporary leave permanent after continued complaints. Her savings wouldn't last much longer. On her laptop screen, a half-completed application for a flight attendant position stared back at her. "At least I'll be in the air," she muttered to herself, the irony burning her throat like acid. Her father's photo watched her from beside the computer. That little girl in the cockpit, full of dreams, sitting where she belonged. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered. "I tried." With a decisive motion, Alexandra closed the flight attendant application and opened a new tab. She typed "apartment rentals Midwest" into the search bar. Somewhere far from aviation, somewhere to start fresh, where no one would recognize her face or name, somewhere to forget. As she scrolled through listings, her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, fearing another reporter or prank call from Reeves' pilots. On the 4th ring, she picked up without speaking. Captain Alexandra Winters. The voice was unfamiliar, female, authoritative. "It's just Alex now," she replied flatly. "This is Colonel Diane Marshall, Director of Advanced Systems Test Directorate at Edwards." There was a pause. General Haraway suggested I call you. Alexandra's breath caught. I thought the general was recovering from a stroke. Yes, and during his recovery, certain irregularities in personnel files came to his attention, including yours. Alexandra's heart pounded. What kind of irregularities? The kind that suggest deliberate tampering. The kind that end careers, but not yours. There was a pause. Tell me, Captain Winters, how quickly can you get to Edwards? I'm not a captain anymore, Alexandra said automatically. According to the corrected records I'm looking at, you are. In fact, there's a promotion recommendation that was apparently misplaced 6 months ago. Colonel Marshall's voice softened slightly. Your father saved General Haraway's life, Captain. He never forgot that debt. Now, how quickly can you get to Edwards? Alexandra's eyes fell on her father's photograph again. The little girl in the cockpit looked back at her waiting. I can leave now, she said. The drive from Phoenix to Edwards Air Force Base in California took 7 hours, but for Alexandra, it felt like crossing between worlds. With each mile, she felt herself returning, not fully to the person she had been before Holloman, but to someone new, forged from both triumph and humiliation. As the familiar security gates appeared on the horizon, she gripped the steering wheel tighter. This was either her redemption or her final heartbreak. The guard at the gate checked her ID against his list, his eyes widening slightly. Welcome back, Captain Winters. Colonel Marshall is expecting you. Not Miss or Ma'am. Captain. The sound of her rank sent an electric current through her body. Colonel Marshall wasn't what Alexandra had expected. A petite woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair cut in a practical bob. Her office was a testament to a career that had broken barriers long before Alexandra had even dreamed of flying. Photographs of experimental aircraft lined the walls, and in several of them, Marshall stood beside them in a flight suit, her expression one of quiet confidence. Sit down, Captain, Marshall said, gesturing to a chair. I've reviewed your entire file, both the official version and the one we recovered from Reeves' private records. It's quite a discrepancy. She slid 2 folders across the desk, one thin, full of negative evaluations and incident reports. The other thick with commendations, test scores, and performance reviews that told an entirely different story. General Haraway has been concerned about Colonel Reeves for some time, Marshall continued. Your case provided the catalyst we needed for a full investigation. Turns out you weren't the first female pilot he forced out, just the most visible because of your father's reputation. Alexandra felt a complex mix of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also anger that it had taken her personal connection to power, her father's legacy, to make anyone take notice. With all due respect, Colonel, why should I believe this isn't just another setup? Another chance to fail publicly? Marshall's expression didn't change. Because I'm offering you the chance to fly the F-22, Captain. Not in a training scenario, not in a simulator, the real thing. One flight to prove what you can do. The next 2 weeks were a blur of medical evaluations, simulator sessions, briefings on the latest F-22 avionics, and scrutiny from every direction. Not everyone at Edwards was happy about her presence. She could feel the skepticism from some of the male pilots, the sidelong glances, the conversations that stopped when she entered a room. But Marshall's authority was absolute, and her standards were impossibly high for everyone, regardless of gender. I don't care if you're a man, woman, or Martian, she told her pilots during one briefing. I care if you can fly. Period. Alexandra worked harder than she ever had, sleeping only 4 hours a night, reviewing technical specifications until she could recite them from memory, pushing her body to maintain the physical conditioning needed for high-G maneuvers. 2 days before her scheduled flight, Marshall handed her a tablet. You should see this. It was a secure message from General Haraway. Colonel Reeves has been informed of your reinstatement and upcoming evaluation flight. As expected, he's filed a formal protest, claiming you represent an unacceptable risk to high-value equipment. He's bringing his demonstration team to Edwards to observe. Said he wants to be present when you, and I quote, prove once and for all that women don't belong in the Raptor program. Alexandra looked up at Marshall, whose thin smile reminded her of a predator. Reeves has no idea what's coming, does he, Colonel? No, Marshall replied. He doesn't. Edwards Air Force Base hummed with activity as a special demonstration day dawned. Military brass, defense contractors, and international observers gathered in the secure viewing area. The event, a comparative analysis of next-generation fighter capabilities featuring elite pilots from across the armed forces. Now officially reinstated, Captain Winters stood alone in the ready room, adjusting her flight suit. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind of simulator sessions, physical evaluations, and classified briefings. Colonel Marshall had been clear. This was her one chance. The irregularities in her record had been corrected, but her performance today would determine whether she had a future in the Air Force. They're here, Colonel Marshall said, entering the room. Colonel Reeves and his team from Holloman. They're demonstrating the F-22's tactical superiority portion of the program. Alexandra's fingers froze on her collar. He doesn't know I'm here. No one outside my direct chain of command knows you're flying today. General Haraway made sure your name was kept off all documentation. You're listed simply as Test Pilot Designate TD7. The flight line was a pageant of military aviation excellence. F-35s, F-15X, and the star of the show, the F-22 Raptor, stood ready for their demonstrations. Alexandra kept her distance, flight helmet tucked under her arm, face shield down, as Colonel Reeves briefed the assembled dignitaries on the F-22's unmatched capabilities. Today you'll see why the Raptor remains the undisputed queen of the skies, he announced, and why only the best of the best are selected to fly her. One by one, the demonstration flights proceeded. Pilots showcased their aircraft's maneuverability, weapon systems, and tactical advantages. The crowd responded with appropriate appreciation, but everyone was waiting for the F-22 performance, the highlight of the program. Finally, Reeves and his 3-pilot team took to the skies in their Raptors. Their formation flying was impeccable, their maneuvers precise and impressive. The aircraft danced through the sky with deadly grace, performing rolls, high G-turns, and simulated combat engagements that left the audience murmuring in appreciation. As they landed to applause, Reeves' satisfaction was evident even from a distance. He removed his helmet and waved to the crowd, basking in their adulation. Colonel Marshall approached the microphone next. Thank you, Colonel Reeves, and the Holloman team for that impressive display of the F-22's capabilities under standard operating parameters. She paused. Now we'd like to show you what the F-22 can really do. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Reeves frowned, clearly not expecting this addition to the program. Test Pilot Designate TD7 will now demonstrate advanced handling characteristics of the F-22 under extreme performance conditions, Marshall continued. Alexandra walked across the tarmac to the waiting F-22, a different aircraft than the ones Reeves' team had flown, modified for the test directorate's specific requirements. She could feel Reeves watching her, though he couldn't see her face behind the tinted visor. Once airborne, Alexandra felt a calm certainty settle over her. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth. This was about belonging in the sky. What followed was unlike anything the assembled experts had ever witnessed. The F-22 under Alexandra's control became something more than a machine. She pushed the aircraft to its theoretical limits and beyond, executing maneuvers that the design engineers had calculated possible, but that no test pilot had successfully performed in actual flight. In the viewing stands, a senior engineer from Lockheed Martin turned to his colleague. The onboard computer should be preventing half of these maneuvers. They violate the safety parameters. She's not overriding the computer, his colleague replied, checking the telemetry data streaming to his tablet. She's dancing with it, finding the spaces between the restrictions. I've never seen anything like it. For the finale, Alexandra took the F-22 to maximum altitude, then executed a controlled flat spin, considered unrecoverable in this aircraft, followed by a perfect recovery less than 1,000 feet above the desert floor. As she pulled up, she inverted the aircraft and flew directly over the viewing area, close enough for everyone to feel the power of the engines. When she taxied to a stop and powered down, silence hung over the entire base. She removed her helmet and stepped down from the aircraft, finally revealing her identity. Colonel Reeves stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. Beside him, his pilot stared with undisguised shock. In the VIP section, General Haraway smiled faintly, nodding once in her direction. "Captain Winters," Colonel Marshall said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I believe you've just rewritten the performance handbook for the F-22. Alexandra said nothing. She didn't need to. The sky had spoken for her. The aftermath of Alexandra's demonstration flight unfolded like a series of shockwaves. First came the immediate technical impact. Lockheed Martin engineers surrounded her almost before she completed post-flight procedures, peppering her with questions about her techniques and the aircraft's responses. The data from her flight would ultimately lead to 3 software updates for the F-22's flight control systems, expanding its operational capabilities by nearly 20%. Second came the professional recognition. Before she'd even left the flight line, she'd received offers from 2 elite test pilot programs and a personal message from NASA's Director of Astronaut Selection. But it was the third shockwave, the human impact, that would ripple furthest. Colonel Reeves attempted damage control immediately. A reckless display of dangerous flying, he called it to anyone who would listen. Completely outside operational parameters, she nearly destroyed that aircraft. But the technical data told a different story. Alexandra hadn't simply pushed the aircraft to its limits. She'd revealed that the limits themselves had been artificially constrained. By the end of the day, Reeves was conspicuously absent from the debriefing sessions, having been called to an urgent meeting with General Haraway and the Secretary of the Air Force. 3 days after her flight, Alexandra received an encrypted email containing Reeves' private personnel files. Page after page of fabricated infractions, manipulated test scores, and comments designed to build cases for removing female pilots from advanced programs. More disturbing were his notes about her father, suggesting that Colonel Winters' heroic final mission had actually been a reckless error that the Air Force had covered up. Reeves had been constructing a narrative that would not only destroy Alexandra's career, but tarnish her father's legacy as well. The next morning, Alexandra was summoned to a video conference with the Secretary of the Air Force. Colonel Reeves sat stone-faced in the background as the Secretary addressed her directly. "Captain Winters, I want to personally apologize for the unconscionable treatment you've received. The evidence of systematic discrimination and record tampering in Colonel Reeves' files is overwhelming. Effective immediately, he is relieved of command at Holloman and will face a formal investigation." Reeves' face drained of color as security officers appeared at his door. Furthermore, the Secretary continued, "I'm ordering a complete review of all personnel actions under Reeves' command, with reinstatement offers to any pilots whose careers were affected by his misconduct." She paused, looking directly at Alexandra. "As for you, Captain Winters, I believe a promotion is long overdue. You've demonstrated not just extraordinary flying skills, but the kind of character and resilience we need in our officer corps." 1 year later, Major Alexandra Winters stood at a podium at Holloman Air Force Base, the very place where her wings had been stripped away, addressing rows of pilot candidates for the new Advanced Flight Testing Unit, unofficially nicknamed Winters Wolves. Nearly 40% of them were women. "The future of aviation isn't about who you are," she told them, her voice strong and clear. It's about what you can do when no one puts artificial limits on your potential. The transformation of the Air Force's elite testing programs didn't happen overnight. Change never does. There were still skeptics, still those who whispered that standards had been lowered, that political correctness had trumped operational requirements. But the data spoke for itself. Under Alexandra's leadership, the Winter's Wolves broke 14 performance records in their first year alone. More importantly, the unit's accident rate was the lowest in the history of experimental aircraft testing. Excellence wasn't just a buzzword. It was a measurable outcome when barriers to talent were removed. Colonel Reeves had been reassigned to an administrative position in Alaska following the extensive investigation. His protests had fallen on deaf ears once General Haraway presented the full evidence of systematic discrimination and record tampering to the Secretary of the Air Force. As Alexandra concluded her address to the new candidates, a young female Air Force cadet approached her hesitantly. "Major Winters, I'm sorry to bother you, but..." She held up her phone, showing a classified but leaked video of Alexandra's F-22 demonstration that had gone viral within military circles. "Is it true what they're saying? That you rewrote the performance parameters for the Raptor program?" Alexandra studied the young woman, eager, uncertain, determined. She saw herself from years ago. "What's your name, cadet?" "Jennifer Torres, ma'am. I've applied for flight training, but my advisor suggested I consider another specialty track. He said women typically struggle with the high-performance aircraft evaluations." Alexandra was quiet for a moment, then reached into her pocket and removed her father's pilot wings, the pair he'd been wearing on his final mission. She'd carried them every day since his death. "Torres, the sky doesn't care about your gender. It only respects those who approach it with skill, respect, and courage." She pressed the wings into the cadet's hand. "Return these to me when you get your own." That evening, Alexandra studied a new aircraft design in her office. The next generation of hypersonic military aircraft, a program so classified that fewer than 50 people knew of its existence. As the technical lead, she would be the first to test its revolutionary propulsion system. The risk was significant, the potential for advancement extraordinary. Her phone chimed with a message from Colonel Marshall. "Simulator results look promising. Still think you're the right pilot for this?" Alexandra smiled, typing back a simple response. "The sky's never been a limit for me, Colonel. Just a starting point." On the wall of her office hung only 2 items: her father's photograph of her as a child in the cockpit, and a framed quote, "The sky doesn't care about your gender. It only respects those who approach it with skill, respect, and courage." 6 months after her demonstration flight, Alexandra stood at the podium at the Air Force Academy graduation ceremony, pinning wings on a new generation of pilots, men and women alike. As she did, she caught sight of Cadet Torres among them, standing tall and proud in her new uniform. Some battles are won not with power, but with excellence. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.